Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lorna Titley and I'm one of the directors with Quaynote Communications. We're delighted to welcome you to this webinar on the future for super yachts, business jets and luxury property. Before we start the conference properly, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Quaynote and then go through some housekeeping points before I hand you over to our panel for today. So I know a lot of you out there, and I know that a lot of you know us, but for those of you not so familiar, as I say, the company is Quaynote Communications, and we're delighted to be staging this online conference today. We are a specialist events and marketing and PR company, and we focus particularly in super yachts, business jets, and also the security industries. Now, if any of you out there want to find out more about online conferences or Quaynote Communications and what we do for the future, then please don't hesitate to contact us at the end of this webinar. You can contact either myself, Lorna Titley, or my co-director, Alison Single, and we'd be delighted to help you. So that being that, I'll just move on to some housekeeping points. You can submit questions for our panel or indeed any of our speakers or panelists today, and we'd be delighted if you could do so. You should see at the bottom of your screen that there is a question and answer box that you can put your questions in throughout the sessions. I do urge you to put your questions in the Q&A section and rather than in the chat, because that way we stand more chance of seeing them and actually answering. If we're not able to come to you and answer your questions today, then obviously please feel free to reach out to our panelists afterwards via social media, LinkedIn or whatever. But we will try our very best to come back to any queries, any questions that you may have. So what we're going to do in the interests of brevity is rather than reading out the full bios, which are nonetheless very impressive of all our panelists and speakers, we're going to put the biographies for our moderators and in some cases for our panelists in the chat facility as well. Where we can't do that, you can actually see those bios on our website at www.quaynote.com. We will, where necessary, just ask panelists just to give their own brief summary of their background where it's appropriate. So you will notice that we're actually recording this session. What we will do at the end of the conference is that we will ask the speakers and panelists their permission for us to disseminate this to a wider audience or for people who haven't managed to make it today. So yes, we will be recording it, but do bear with us. It will take a few days for us to edit it and to send that out to anybody that would like to have a copy. And I think that is probably all from me now. Bear with us as well if we have any changes in the lineup today. And in fact, for our first panel, that looks like that may be the case. You were probably expecting to see Quentin Bargate from Bargate Murray, who would be sitting here moderating this session. Unfortunately, Quentin has had a power cut after a storm, so he's made a very heroic dash from his home office to his actual office in London to be with us here today, but he doesn't seem to have quite made it yet. So delighted to say nonetheless that we have his colleague Dominic Bolfin, who is joining us today, and Dominic will be leading the panel discussion. So I am going to, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dom in just a moment. And let him lead the panel. Thank you very much, Dom.
Thank you, Lorna. And as Lorna said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to the first panel discussion, which looks at the impact of COVID-19, specifically across the super yacht and aviation industry. And we've got a panel of speakers from those industries. So to take you quickly around, we have Yusuf Hafiz, who is Vice President for Sales and Marketing at NASJet Private Aviation. We have Tom Mugmal, CEO of Island Global Yachting, Ona Ugan, who's CLM Operations Director, Captain Andrea Simic of Simon Marine, Shelley Dowie, Head of Yacht Management at Royal Oceanic, Mike Brewer from Evolution Yachting, and Farouk Nevsi of Fedship. So obviously we've all spent the last 6 or so months now locked up at home or popping in and out of our offices. It's been a very different world for all of us. So I think the first thing really is to just assess what has been the impact for our panelists in their industries, in their specific sections of the industry. And for my own ease, I'm going to look at the screen as it is in front of me. So Mike, what's the impact that you've seen over the last few months for you?
Well, for a start, frightening, confusion and everything else, probably 50 to 70% drop in business. And the unknown all the time. We never knew where we were going. Things kept changing. New measures had to be brought in. Everybody had to learn. And hopefully that will help us for the future, I would say. But like every industry was impacted, we all suffered.
And to move on to Shelley, I understand that you're in a relatively new role. So your life has changed a lot in the last few months, and how has that changed for you, and what's your learning curve, I suppose, through COVID?
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Dom. I mean, I've come from one yacht management company to another. So in regards to and been with COVID through both. And I think as a general consensus, we can say that the yacht management industry has continued to be busy. But it's been a different type of busy. You know, at this time of the year, in the summer, we're normally dealing with charters, changing of crews, owners' requests, and things like that. But instead, we've had to be dealing with crew logistics, postponing audits, postponing surveys, a lot of regulatory compliance with the crew certificate expiring, not being able to do training. So it's been a different type of busy. So it's certainly kept us on our toes.
Can I just say, my apologies for being late, force majeure. There was a power outage and I've just driven like a lunatic to get to my office, which is where I now am. So living proof of the circumstances under which we now live, I'm afraid, but there we are. So yes, very good to meet you all. And carry on, Shelley. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm finished. Quentin, very nice to see you.
All right, thanks. Well, with the minimum preparation, because I've been driving, as I said, like a lunatic, this session is all about COVID, which is our favourite topic at the moment. And I'm a super yacht lawyer, of course, and therefore I've been deeply involved in and affected by, to some extent, not just my firm, but also the industry as a whole, been affected by the circumstances. And I don't want to repeat anything anybody else has already said, but I think that I've been quite impressed by how the industry has reacted, how little effect that the overall circumstances that we found ourselves in have had on us. I don't know how we're going to organise this, but the best way forward is simply say, well, different sections of the industry have been affected differently. There are yards, there are brokers, there are other professionals like myself involved in the industry. There are crew, of course, which are one of the more seriously affected parts of the industry. Who would like to lead off and say something about what they think is the most important factor that's affected them?
I'll jump in there, Quentin. I think for us, the biggest has been logistics, whether that comes to crew, whether it's been staff traveling, yachts being able to move freely throughout Europe. The things just changing on a daily, hourly basis. You know, you might have an owner's trip booked to go to France or Spain, and we've had to be very reactive. Yes. And open to a lot of change. So logistics, I think, has been our key learning curve.
I see Farouk is with us from Fedship. Farouk, have you found this has been a particularly trying time for yards? Because that's you're obviously a top North European yard. Yeah.
Well, yes, it definitely also impacted many shipyards around the world, and also Fedship in that sense. We suddenly, I think the first biggest impact for us was driven by the fact that we felt the responsibility of taking care of the well-being of our employees and our clients first. Because suddenly when this whole situation occurred, we had to put a lot of guidelines in place and follow hygiene and social distancing aspects. And you can imagine when you're building a yacht, it's very difficult to separate people with that distance when working so closely together. You cannot suddenly create a situation whereby the yacht is, suddenly looks different, if you will. So we had to work with working groups and contain different aspects of the build process and make sure that these groups of people, when one is infected in one group, you can send away the whole group, not to affect the whole majority of employees. And to manage all of that was quite difficult. But at the same time, it gave us a lot of opportunity to really look closely at the processes. And then, of course, you have the supply management part, whereby your subcontractors, the ones that need to stick to a planning, and also the subcontractors that you hire in to build with you many aspects of the boat. Managing that part was also tricky. And at the same time, when you decide that at least all the office staff needs to work from home, we found out that we were a very flexible company, because within 2 weeks, we managed to have, if you look at our engineering company, for instance, 200 people, literally in 2 weeks, went from 100% office to 100% at home with all the equipment in place and everything. So that has become also the mainstream way of working if we look at the organization today. The other point is of course the whole marketing agenda.
Yes.
That was our type of industry is built upon personal contact and built on trust and everything.
Well, for today would have been the Friday of the Monaco Yacht Show, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And there are lots of parties. We'd have had our party at Monaco yesterday, and there'd be parties today, and the meeting people. So that's something which has been completely stripped from our business model. But having conferences like this online, which are pretty successful, I think, but still, we have a client, of course, who's having a yacht built by you guys right now. So that's effect we can see as a matter of practical that particular practical point of view, how that's affecting the situation generally. But no, really, I think it's had a significant impact in that sense, and the ability and how we get around that. It's all where we've all been affected. But the issue is, what do we do about it? How do we get around that? How about Ona? Have you had anything to say about that?
Yeah.
What's your experience been?
In the beginning, we were in boat show in Istanbul.
Yes.
Just start in Turkey. Normally, we expecting very busy boat show, but
exactly.
number of the visitors start to go down every day. And in the beginning, we don't know what's happening, what's going on, what we are facing in the future. We come back to marinas. It's something. Some numbers start to increase. Just beginning of the season in the southwest of Turkey, season starting very early, like mid-March, especially for the charter boats. And also the maintenance are continue just before the season. We have some super yachts from the outside of the Turkey. Normally their crew needs to be arrived on that time, like end of March, beginning of April. They have been delayed, but we don't know how long it takes. And we start the reaction. And of course, we as a marina, we need to be train against the COVID station, what we are doing in the marinas, sanitaries, showers, the offices, etc.
Yes.
We have launched an education program to especially for our staff, and later on for our tenants, because we have some tenants at the boatyards and the marina shopping areas, etc. We try to control them, how it's going. Also, in time, some of the boat owners didn't arrive, and they afraid of what is going on my boat, because they planning to be start some jobs on board. We delegate some people to that boats to be look at to help them. And winterized period getting longer than before. Its station continue mid-June. Many of the foreign crew arrived to our marinas, in Turkish marinas. I am talking about in Turkish marinas, like in mid-June, they able to be start the season. And after that, the borders are closed, and many of the boats normally leaving from Turkey and new boats are coming for the season. They stuck in the country, and especially we have mega yacht charter in Turkey. Also, we have bareboat charters Turkey. They didn't start the operation. For the super yachts, they start to come at end of the June, and this August and September we receive more than last year, because Turkey easily to be stay this mega yachts and super yachts.
Yes.
Now we have a lot of inquiry also for the vintage, for the super yachts. In the beginning, we have some lost, but in time, we cover the station in our Turkish marinas.
Yeah, I think the biggest, you're right about that. I think what you just said, I mean, the disruption has been tremendous. Certainly as a super yacht lawyer, I've been getting a lot of inquiries from various people with crew. That's been the big issue. Because you've got an Australian crew member who doesn't want to get on a flight because it's a bit dangerous, and then you're getting asked by a manager, oh, how do we deal with this person? Because they're being unreasonable. Everything's very safe, but then if the crew member doesn't feel comfortable with that situation. So we've been looking at a number of scenarios, and obviously looking at the seafarer employment agreements as well to make sure that they're fit for purpose. I think that's across the board. So dealing with the people, the human element, which is of course at the center of this pandemic, has been very difficult for managers, yacht managers, or members of the crew themselves, crew employment agencies. They've all suffered some issues, and we've had to give some advice to various different clients about how to manage it. And the answer is not to say, well, you've got to get on a plane, that's all there is to it, it's in your contract. You've got to try and be sympathetic towards them. Are people being sympathetic towards members of the crew? Are people being sympathetic towards other industry personnel because of this? Are we being nicer to each other? Who wants to comment about that? Yusuf, you seem to be nodding your head there. Looking at a very nice place you're staying there, I have to say.
Thank you, Quentin. It's been a pleasure listening to different industries, because I think I'm the only one that works on the private aviation side of the business here. Yeah. Interesting to see the similarities between our industries. It's just a wealth of knowledge. I really thank Lorna for reaching out to me to invite me to such an event, because it's just amazing to see how similar we are and how we're suffering, with this COVID situation. Just to let everybody know, I'm based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This background that you see is not the real thing. So exciting and relaxing. That's why I have that here. But in summary, if I can give you a snapshot of some of the difficulties that we've faced and the challenges throughout this period, is it hit us very quickly. We didn't know this was coming. And all of a sudden, we've seen airspaces shut down left and right. We've seen the situation become very complex. Here in Saudi Arabia, the airspace was shut down from The 15th of March, so all domestic travel, all international travel was blocked. And it did not open up domestic travel till about the end of May. So we had a 2.5-month period where there were no movements for any aircraft whatsoever without explicit and special permissions from the government. International travel, believe it or not, just opened up just this month on the 15th of September. So it's been a challenge, I think, for all of us here on the private aviation side. We have ultra high net worth individuals who own these private business jets, Gulfstream G650s, Boeing 777s, BBJs, Boeing business jets, ultra luxury, and they own super yachts as well. I mean, in Cannes and so on. They've not been able to get out of the country, even though they've asked for permissions to go where they want to go, whether they generally go to Nice, France, London, Paris, you name it. It's just been very challenging with getting approvals to leave the country, first of all, because they are local Saudi ultra high net worth individuals, if you will. And on the arriving side in the EU, if you will, it's a challenge because they say, well, we have certain restrictions on certain people coming from certain countries. So it's been challenging. I think in our industry in particular, we manage private business jets. So what really saved us is the management of those assets versus the ownership of the asset. And we realized very quickly, we've been doing this for about 21 years now, is that owning the asset or owning the private business jet as an operator is not really the solution. It's managing the asset. So when we looked at our books, there was a poll just popped up a little while ago and said, how are we faring overall throughout this process? To be honest with you, when you manage the asset, there's less damage on the company itself, which is very interesting. So when we looked at our books, I thought we were going to make a bunch of losses here, and we're trying to cut costs left and right. But it turned out that we're just a little bit above break even, which I thought was very impressive for a private aviation company. And we also have our sister company, FlyNAS, is an airline which is a low-cost hybrid airline here in Saudi Arabia, established in 2007. We operate through our sister company 30 Airbus 320neos, and they've been dramatically affected by all this. It's been one of the worst disasters we can imagine, and our entire 6 months or past 6 months or 7 months, we've just been trying to cut costs. And I think really that was the key to, to holding on, to sustaining the company, if you will. And we're coming out stronger. I believe the end result is through this whole process is we're going to be stronger, we're going to be better, and we're all going to get through this, hopefully.
Is that, that's interesting you should say that. I mean, is that the view generally for people in the industry, that we're going to be stronger and we're going to be better? I mean, they do things differently, certainly. I mean, I don't know there's a panel later on, I think, about the future of yacht shows and super yacht shows and other aviation shows as well. But it's made our life a bit more linear, I suppose, but a little bit more. There aren't the same peaks and troughs during the course of the year, and I normally mark my year with lots of different events. So you've got Fort Lauderdale, which is still on, which is going to be I don't know how that's going to go, but Monaco, and you've got Cayman. I go to Cayman. I was going to go to Europe, to a couple of yards, and so on. Cayman Islands. So those events aren't there, but I'm still getting quite a lot of traction by having these virtual conferences over Zoom that seem to work pretty well. Is it a general view of the panel that we can pretty much get around all the problems we've seen by using technology, or are there some limitations to technology that simply won't make up for the things we've lost? Who wants to comment on that?
I'll go. I mean, I think that to some degree, what this has shown us as a company is that there is, if you put good people together, there's a solution for almost any problem. And I think that's somewhat indicative of the challenges and opportunities the world is facing in general. right before this pandemic, and certainly as we go through it. This is a very fragmented business. It shows that there's people in the supply chain and in the value chain from all over the world. You've got small and medium-sized businesses working together from different countries and different continents and different nationalities. And I think this has heightened the need for companies to share more information. A lot of these trade shows in general end up being sort of business-to-business events anyway. And so this was an opportunity to rethink how we communicate as businesses. And to some degree, it sort of caused people to listen to each other a little bit more, because being from different parts of the world, you have to listen more now because everything is different everywhere. I mean, from our perspective, we are in 13 countries with marinas and offices in almost every continent. And we watched the dominoes fall. So first we were with our colleagues and talking to our colleagues in Italy and watching how things were falling there. I was in Dubai right before the outbreak came to the United States. And understanding the different regulatory regimes as each domino fell in different parts of the world, and talking to our colleagues from different parts of the world as things began to change and governments began to react was fascinating, because you could sort of see that you knew what was coming, but you didn't really know how people in your region were going to react. But it was helpful to talk to folks in Europe before it really hit the United States. And it was helpful to know what the reactions were going to be in different parts of the United States before it went to the Caribbean and Mexico and all of that. And it helped us a lot in just sort of figuring out how to be nimble on the ground, or at least have some psychological security in planning things. I do think that understanding those regimes is really key to being able to plan, and being able to plan kind of helps, at least helps us prepare to receive an end user or facilitate the end user, which is what this is sort of all about. We've seen a lot less activity, but it sort of also is jurisdictionally dependent. Yachting is not boating. Boating in America has exploded in the past 6 months. Yachting can't explode because people don't really know how to do it, because it's not the same as what it was 6 months ago. It's much easier to get on a boat than it is to get on a yacht, because the yacht doesn't know where it can go. Today, Americans can go to America and Mexico, and that's pretty much it. So we've worked really hard to rely on, I think somebody made a comment about, I think it was Farouk, about the people at FedShip. And I think that that's probably universally true across all the panels, which is, people step up in times of crisis, and you really learn who in your organization you can rely on. And also people bring solutions. And I think if you're open to hearing them from your teams, you can learn a lot. I've learned a tremendous amount. And we've done things from trying to get ready for a charter season that may or may not happen in the Caribbean, but what's going to be a key to that. And I think my colleague put up a question around that. But one thing we've done is we've tried to source entire supply chains of coronavirus testing equipment, like reliable testing equipment, because there are supply chains stretched just for that around the world. And some countries have ready access to tests and small islands do not. And so how do we help a local government bring that equipment in so that we have capabilities to keep their economy going? And we've been successful in some jurisdictions and less so in others. How do we keep a construction project ongoing in different countries? Interestingly enough, and I'm sure as you appreciate as a super yacht lawyer, the yacht is a very valuable asset. It may decline in value over time, but it still holds extraordinary value. And the marina, in some degree right now, is more like a bank than it is like a parking lot, because we've got to be able to hold it and make sure that it can be properly functioning, and we can help preserve that value until a boat can choose what it can do. And so that's been interesting also, because usually we're used to boats having more activity than less. I think just sort of the last thing I would say, or second to last, is I think everybody, to some degree, has dealt with sort of black swan events in their business over time. I think this is the first time we've dealt with one that's just that's global, that is a pandemic. We've dealt with hurricanes and all sorts of other challenges, but they've more been regionalized or localized. And to me, it's been fascinating, again, to see how it's impacted people and businesses differently. I do think this is sort of an opportunity industry-wide. I saw another comment about from somebody named Ben about ultimately consumers being selfish, and we do need to adapt the supply chain. But I do think this is an opportunity to engage our stakeholder users a little bit better. We have their ear now because they are more reliant on us than they've ever been to form sort of a quality experience for them. So I would hope, as people are listening to the panel, that we can think about how better to engage the end users and the stakeholders to be more responsible in how we're using these assets and how they're spending their time and how we engage them. And again, at the end, just that we're all sort of collaborating better. And to bring it back to the original point, I think this is an opportunity to do that.
An opportunity, yes. Well, by the way, can I just thank Geraldine, who says that we missed the Bargate Murray stand and party. So there we are. That's very nice. Now, David Robinson, I've got a question here from David Robinson saying, for Farouk actually, asking how many of the FedShip workforce was infected with COVID, and of your 200 engineering staff working from home, will you continue in the future to have a number working at home? Good question for us all, I guess. That certainly is the case with the law firm. It's easier to answer yes. At the moment, we have a lot of people working at home, but different dynamic for a yard, clearly.
Yeah, well, good question, David. First of all, we have 2,000 plus people working for FedShip, and it's not only the engineering staff that we facilitated at home. It's a much bigger number. What we decided is that for this period is we can only have a maximum of half of the staff, that is the office staff, being at the office to secure the distance measures that we have in place. So out of the number of those 2,000 plus, we were lucky to only have a handful of people infected by COVID, but we had very strict measures in place that if someone is infected, how to react on that. And that enabled us also to immediately contain it and not let it affect the rest of the organization, because that was a very important tool. And for the future, yes, we were already playing with how flexible can you organize your workforce to work from home and at the office. And we decided that it is perfectly possible if you just have the most important element is the element of trust and facilitating your employees to take their own responsibility. And we noticed that there's a huge amount of loyalty and flexibility at the workforce itself to enable itself to work from home and report and manage their work in a proper manner. And that will be the future for FedShip anyway. I wanted to quickly respond to the earlier question whether the sales for superyachts will decline or not, because that was also one in the Q&A. In the beginning, we were, as FedShip, especially the commercial force and the commercial workforce and the marketing workforce, we were flying literally everywhere for every piece of communication. And as you can imagine, our personal contact is because it's such an emotional product, is vital to the sales process. And so we were, in the beginning, we were quite scared that that would impact us heavily. But throughout the months, we suddenly noticed that it is perfectly possible to do the majority of your dialogue with the owners and owners' teams, to have that online, to have that via these type of platforms. The remainder is that we are also very important social human beings, and this squared approach does not always work, because we do need to read each other a little bit better, and that is I think also symbolic for the level of trust that you have into each other, because that's also part of that emotion. We think the number of leads is at the moment throughout the whole industry looks like it's not hindered too much because of COVID. People are still anticipating on the next few years of building super yachts.
What I'd like to know generally is whether or not the design of yachts will change as a result. I think I've seen some indication that's the case. And that people have to lay out yachts, design the interiors of yachts to be COVID secure, even if it's not needed. You never know when the next pandemic is going to come. So you need to redesign yachts and think about that. And the sensitivity of certainly one or two people I've been speaking to who are looking to buy a yacht, looking at different choice of yards, that's something that concerns them. They want to know they've got their own safe space. And yachts are a very good way to self-isolate if you're on a yacht in a decent place. It's not a bad idea. So that's my comment on that. Now, Mike, I don't know whether I've heard from Mike Brewer there. I know he's a late entrant to this panel. So no less loved for that. So, Mike, do you have any comments to make?
I mentioned earlier on, and I will back up what Shelley mentioned, that the biggest problem for us as a group right through the Med was the confusion during the season. Well, the confusion being the change of regulations between Brussels and the individual countries in Europe.
Yeah.
There were the standard 15 countries that were allowed into the EU, changed between 13 and 15, etc. And the rest of the world basically was excluded except under special circumstances. Now, if you take the quality customers in the industry, it's America, Russia, Ukraine, Persian Gulf countries, etc. All of these countries were excluded. And we had another problem, is that a vessel would have, for example, a Russian owner who had a Cypriot passport who could come in, but his wife didn't have a Cypriot passport. So their problem would arise. So then they would say, well, we'll send the vessel to Croatia, which was not part of the Schengen agreement, and the lady could be tested and joined there, and the vessel would sail from there and then not be allowed into the next port because the lady was on the list of not allowed. So these things changed all the time and created horrendous logistic problems for all concerned, especially the poor captain sitting in the middle. That's the bloke my heart was bleeding for, to be honest with you. He was under pressure from the owners, he was under pressure from management companies, and he was lacking information. We as a group, having offices right up through the Mediterranean, sent out regular bulletins on the changes. Italy one day would allow this, Croatia the next day wouldn't allow that, and all this information had to be processed, vessels routing had to be changed, cruise routing had to be changed, etc., etc. So it was a logistical nightmare right the way through. Then there were the issues of the individual vessel. We were told well in advance by the masters that the owners wanted this, 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 and this for COVID. Other vessels would require that, that, and that. You adapted, you had a standard policy of how you would do it, and sanitizing the products, masks for the agents going down, putting the stuff on the swimming platform, not going near the actual crew members, etc., etc., etc. This, I wouldn't be surprised if it carried on, including health certificates for the vessels to be sent in advance. I anticipate this will probably carry on into the future, at least in the immediate future, so to speak of. It was a lesson learned, a very hard one, I might add, and the future to me, I can't say that I see it going back to normal very, very soon. And the only good thing I can say is we've all learned a lot, including the owners, the captains, etc., and are now more open to adapting to the situation.
Yeah, do you think the education for captains and crews is sufficiently good in the sense that there are these changes and they do depend upon leadership from the management and from the captain? There's also pressure from the owners to get things done. I mean, do you think that that's, generally anybody on the panel, think that this is sufficiently clear that captains have got their their heads in the right place to deal with what is a very complex and evolving problem, because that's not something I would normally have to deal with on this scale anyway.
I think from our side, we've had to be a lot more sympathetic to the captains. You know, it's easy from a yacht management perspective to put out lots of notices, like Mike said, update the captains on a daily basis, deal with the crewing issues, provide support. But we've also had to anticipate the emotional side of it as well, because they're actually dealing with it on the ground where they are, and dealing with the owners as well. You know, you've got charter guests on board that haven't been able to go ashore like they normally do, and haven't been able to go out to bars and restaurants, which puts additional pressure on board the captains to entertain more as well, and deal with all the logistics, and deal with all the crewing problems as well. So I think from a management side, we've learned a lot. I mean, we put a lot of procedures in place. We had COVID response plans for outbreaks on board, and doing the paperwork side of it, although it was very labor intensive, was almost the easiest part. You know, providing, you said earlier about technology, it's easy to pick up the phone, but during times like this, the captain wanted you there and in place, and wanted that one-to-one relationship and support on a personal level as well.
Well, it's interesting. Bert Fowles asked this question, addressed it actually to Captain Andrea Simic. My apologies if I didn't get your name perfect, but
no, I heard worse.
Well, thank you very much for that. Very kind of you. The questions as follows is: with high hopes the 2020-2021 winter charter season, what key operating lessons have been learned from the Mediterranean during COVID-19? How can a captain be best supported, leading into the point that Shelley's been discussing, during COVID-19? What's your thoughts?
So I'm very optimistic. Not because I'm an optimistic person, but because if we dealt with COVID situation so perfectly last 6-7 months, I think the future will be even better. I think that the main problem with the countries was they put all the tourist industry in the same box. And for example, Croatia decided to go with completely other approach. As you probably know, we opened completely on 19th of May, and we are still open. When the situation, let's say, got a little bit more difficult on the 15th of July, we decided to make obligatory the testing not older than 48 hours for all non-EU citizens coming to Croatia. And we excluded the crew from that regulation because the crew cannot be PCR tested on the sea on arrival to Croatia. That was just not functioning. But for example, from my side of my company, we decided to hire a psychologist, and she is working with us 24 hours, not 24 hours a day, but she's at our disposal all the time, visiting all 5 offices, because I noticed that was the main issue. I don't know, younger people will not remember, but do you remember Minesweeper, that game? It was like that. We thought just every day in the morning was, will I find the mine today? And the main problem with COVID is not only the disease, because it's serious, but in some cases it's not. It's the stigma. You know, it's the stigma that you have after that. So you can lose the business in one day, because, you know, you will say to people, you know, I'm COVID-free after 15 days, but this will remain in the air. You know, people are strange. But again, I am very optimistic, and I know we are we are trying to make new plans and everything for the COVID, but believe me, at the end is just a question of luck. And I will tell you just one short story just to understand me completely. I have a friend. He went to the elementary school with me, and now he is working in a center when they are doing the tests. So he's completely covered. And when he's finishing his shift, he goes into one room that he's disinfected completely, and after that, his suit is burned out. And after that, he's going to the other room, and they are disinfecting him again. Do you really think with all the education that we will give to the captains and to the crew and to everybody that we will be free of COVID? We will not.
No.
I said to my team to avoid nightclubs. I said we will have a big party with each other at the end of the season, but just avoid nightclubs. And that's it. This is the only thing that you can do, because it's really a question of luck. I know a lot of people who just don't know how did they get the COVID. They don't know.
Well, I'm afraid it is luck. There's a very large chunk of luck in all of this, and the rules are changing in each jurisdiction. One of the biggest problems that we've had to deal with is the fluctuating changes. You've got a yacht going into a...
But my point is, every country needs to individually put in focus the industry. For example, we had the same numbers as last year, and 2019 was the best year in Croatia for yachting. We had same number in mega yachting, and in bareboat yachting we had decrease around 20%. So it can function, and it can function well, but we cannot put everybody in the same box. We cannot put the nightclub and the stadiums for football and yachting in the same box. Just cannot. For example, I need to say to Yusuf, the aviation saved us completely. Private aviation saved the tourism in Croatia this year, and I thank you for that.
Well, I
would agree.
We're not
agree
important
with the
enough industry.
We saw when local governments and regional governments consider this industry as somewhat distinct from all of the other leisure elements. You know, in the U.S. Virgin Islands this summer, we've had the best summer we've ever had since we've built our properties there, because they were smart enough, and usually Caribbean governments tend to be a little bit slower to react, but they were smart enough to keep on letting yachts clear into the jurisdiction, understanding that, you know, while there may be some similarities between a yacht and a cruise ship, a yacht is a lot smaller, it's a lot easier to control, and the marina is a lot more of a controlled environment, where we saw St. Martin virtually close its port for a long period of time. And this industry actually is an opportunity to be a continued economic driver in different locations if governments are willing to take a little bit of time and a step back and think about it. I would say, to the other point, one of the things I have concern about is crew. If people see what's happening at universities in America, that's where COVID is exploding in the United States right now. I have real reservations about keeping people in that demographic on yachts apart. Part of the reason why they are crew is the lifestyle that it affords them during a certain period of their life. And I think this is going to be a challenge on an ongoing basis until there's a better handle on things. And the more testing you can do, obviously, the better. And the more you can keep them out of nightclubs, the better. But when I was in college, they wanted us. You know, we had a very wise guy that worked in our house who said, if you tell the boys they can't drink on the first floor, they're just going to go drink on the second floor. So, you know, this is going to be difficult when people start using boats a lot again. And I don't know if there is a good solution to that, but that's one for everyone to look out for, I think.
Well, I've got a question here from an anonymous attendee to me, actually. It says, why do you think that yachts are not already COVID-19 secure in their design? What part of the design needs to change? And I'll just think, listening to you there, Tom, talking about the young people want you to behave in a particular way, which is entirely understandable. When it comes to yacht design, possibly crew accommodation. I mean, I know that the Maritime Labour Convention dictated larger cabins effectively. Is there anything else? I mean, I know that in some of the larger yachts, you have passageways. Staff can move around and not actually interact with the owner or the guests. That's one way of doing things. I mean, I'd like to know whether Farouk, for example, or anybody else would like to comment on the issue about what needs to change with design to make it more attractive to somebody who is concerned about infection, make it more attractive and maybe a better sales proposition.
Well, I'm afraid that our answer is way too easy for everybody because we build custom super yachts. You know, when you build pure custom, you can simply put all the measures in place upon client's request. But the yachts, I agree with the Q&A question, that the yachts are in their own design already committed to securing the privacy of owners and to a large extent, and I don't see any other additional aspect that needs to be put in place. So that is our answer.
Would there be some sort of advertising advantage? I mean, if you've got a choice of owners have a choice of a lot of good quality yards, they may say, well, this yard's telling me that they can produce a COVID secure yacht. Is that just just bullshit, or is it actually something that makes something that can be done? I don't know whether that's more space.
What we notice in the discussions also internally is our this is the broader impact, I think, of COVID. It's our awareness towards what we are doing with the world and how we build yachts is specifically for our trade. The element of sustainability suddenly becomes more topical on the way we think. And I think that is the biggest impact on how we behave, how we deal with utilizing materials, finding alternative fuels, and all the aspects that are the broader essence of how to move forward. I think that is what the good thing that COVID has brought. It's the greater awareness and willingness to make a change.
Yeah, what is going to be that's an interesting point. What is the biggest plus that's going to come out of all this, do you think? Anybody?
Sorry, Yusuf, less flying.
Less flying.
I think from our side, Quentin, if you'll allow me.
Yes, of course.
Somebody else raised their hand. Again, I'm just seeing so many similarities between our industries. This is just a wealth of knowledge for me. Private aviation wise, we're seeing more people book private business jets. People that have never booked private business jets in the past, they're now wanting to book with us because they want that privacy. They want to only have their families on board the aircraft, if you will. They don't want to socialize with other people on a airline, even though here in Saudi, we still have the middle seat blocked. It's mandatory by the regulatory body to have the middle seat empty. The preventative measures that we're taking in our industry by being extra cautious, by disinfecting the aircraft before and after the departure of the passengers, we're just seeing it of newcomers into the industry. And I feel I'm not as you all are. You all are experts in your industry, but I feel that you're going to see more business down the road. People want to be with their close family members together if they're chartering, and obviously in Saudi Arabia we have big families here, so they would charter together. So from my perspective, business aviation is recovering a lot faster than the airlines are, and super yacht business probably will recover equally as well. So I mean, we supplement each other. Like I said earlier, our owners, they own super yachts as well. The biggest challenge for them, they want to get to their super yacht today, which is sitting in Cannes or sitting in Nice or wherever it may be, and they're trying to get it to a country where they can land in and actually go and board their super yacht. That's been their biggest challenge right now. They've not been able to do that. So.
Quentin, I think unfortunately we've come to the end of our time. So would you just like to wind up the panel?
Oh, well, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I was getting so carried away there.
I know. We could have gone on for hours.
But I'm going to probably continue this conversation in another forum and another time. But yeah, thank you, everybody who's been here. Been a great panel. I hope everyone who's watching has enjoyed it and enjoyed the exchanges. So thanks very much. Okay, Lorna, back to you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Quentin. Thank you, everyone on the panel. Too numerous to mention individually, but thank you so much for your time and your valuable contributions today. I actually found that discussion very, very insightful. Thank you very much for everybody out there who filled in the poll as well. I'm just going to quickly share the results for that while we're getting our next panelists up on the screen. So hopefully you can see this on your screens at home. But the question was to you, the audience, was how would you say your industry sector has been impacted by COVID? And we gave you a choice of 4 answers. The first of which was, we've been lucky, there's been little or no impact. And we had just under 1 in 3 of you, 27% said, yeah, little or no impact. So they're the lucky ones, I guess. Yeah, the majority, the most significant majority, 59% had said, yes, it's been difficult, but my sector will recover eventually, which I think pretty much chimes with what people in the panel have been saying to varying degrees. And then 8% sadly report that the impact has been devastating for many in my sector. Obviously, we don't know the sectors behind that stat, but yeah, you would expect some people to sadly be badly affected. And then 6% have said none of the above. So thank you everyone for giving your feedback to that poll. Thank you once again, Quentin, and all our panelists.
Yes, well, thank you. Right, we should go.
Excellent.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody. So please do